The wind howled across the desolate plains of Wyoming territory, carrying dust and secrets. The setting sun bled across the horizon, painting the sky with gold and fire. Clayton Reeves tugged his worn hat lower over his brow and gave a soft whistle to his horse, Jasper. They had been riding since dawn. No destination, no company, no reason except to keep moving. That was what loneliness did. It kept a man wandering. Clayton wasn't always alone. Once he'd been a ranch hand for the McGraw outfit, and before that he'd had a fiancée. But she'd run off with a banker's son, and the ranch folded after a drought. Life had peeled him like bark off a dying tree, leaving him hollow inside. When a storm rolled in that night, the cowboy sought shelter near the old Pine Creek trail. He spotted a faint light flickering from a cabin half buried in snowdrifts. "Looks like luck's finally not in my way," he muttered, tightening Jasper's reins as thunder cracked. The cabin was small and crooked, built from rough pine logs. Smoke barely trickled from the chimney. Clayton knocked twice, and when the door creaked open, a small boy stood there, no more than 10, holding a rusty shotgun too big for his arms. "Don't come closer, mister," the boy warned, voice shaking. Clayton raised his hand slowly. "Easy now, partner. I'm just looking for shelter till the storm blows over." The boy squinted through the dim light. Behind him, Clayton saw a frail old woman wrapped in a wool blanket sitting near the hearth. "Let him in, Eli," she said, her voice calm but weak. "He don't look like trouble." The boy hesitated, then lowered the gun. Clayton stepped inside, removing his hat. "Ma'am, much obliged. Didn't mean to startle your boy." "You didn't," she said with a faint smile. "He's just been taught to be careful." The cabin smelled of wood smoke and herbs. A pot of stew simmered over the fire, thin but warm. Clayton settled by the door, letting his coat drip meltwater onto the floorboards. The old woman coughed softly. "Name's Maggie Turner. This here's my grandson, Eli. We've been out here a spell, keeping to ourselves." "Clayton Reeves," he said. "Used to work cattle down near Rawlins. Been riding north trying to find a fresh start." Maggie studied him a long moment. "Fresh starts are rare out here, but a good heart finds one sooner or later." Her words warmed something deep inside him. Eli's eyes still held a spark of suspicion. "You got any food of your own?" "Couple strips of jerky and half a loaf of dry bread," Clayton said, pulling them from his saddlebag. "Trade you for a bowl of that stew?" The boy hesitated, but Maggie nodded. "Fair deal." They ate in silence while wind clawed at the shutters. After supper, Clayton fixed the loose door hinge and stacked more firewood. "You didn't have to do that," Eli said, watching him. "Reckon I did," Clayton replied with a faint grin. "Ain't right to eat a family stew and not lend a hand." Days passed before the storm broke. The plains glistened white under a pale sun. Clayton offered to chop more wood before moving on, but Maggie insisted he stay a little longer. "Eli's father passed last spring," she said one evening as they sat by the fire. "And his mama, well, she's gone too. We're all the family left." Clayton looked at the small boy asleep near the hearth, clutching an old toy horse. Something tugged at his chest. "You got folks nearby?" Maggie's eyes softened. "You could say that. But we chose to live quiet for a while. Money doesn't bring peace, Mr. Reeves." He nodded, not understanding fully. To him, peace was a warm fire, a steady horse, and no one expecting much from him. That night, Eli woke screaming from a nightmare. Clayton rushed over, placing a steady hand on the boy's shoulder. "Easy, son. You're safe." The boy clung to him until he drifted back to sleep. Maggie watched from her chair, tears shining in her eyes. "You'd have made a good father," she whispered. Clayton didn't answer. The words cut deep. The next morning, a group of riders appeared in the distance. 6 men on glossy horses, armed and wearing long coats. They moved with purpose. Clayton spotted them first while tending Jasper. "You expecting company?" he asked. Maggie's expression tightened. "No, but it might be time they found us." The riders stopped at the fence line. Their leader, a tall man with silver hair, called out, "Mrs. Turner, we've been searching for you." Eli ran to the window. "Grandma, that's Mr. Whitlock from town." Maggie sighed. "Stay here, both of you." But Clayton followed her outside. The man dismounted and bowed slightly. "Ma'am, the board's been worried sick. You disappeared after your son's funeral. The Turner estate needs your signature to finalize the railway deal." Clayton blinked. "Turner estate? Railway deal?" Maggie's expression was calm. I wanted peace, Mr. Whitlock, not another meeting. I understand, ma'am, Whitlock said. But you're the wealthiest landholder in the territory. People depend on your decisions. Clayton's jaw slackened. The richest family? He looked toward the boy stacking wood, wearing patched boots and a too-big coat. He never would have guessed. Maggie turned to Clayton, her eyes kind but knowing. Now you see, Mr. Reeves, we weren't hiding from the world. We were hiding from everything that made it noisy. After the riders left, Clayton saddled Jasper, unsure if he still belonged there. Guess I best be moving on, ma'am. Didn't mean to overstay. Eli rushed to him. You can't leave. You promised you'd teach me to lasso proper. Clayton smiled sadly. You'll do fine, kid. You got good hands. Maggie stood on the porch leaning on her cane. Clayton Reeves, you're a fool if you think kindness don't earn you a place. You gave us warmth when we had none. He tipped his hat. And you gave me something I thought I'd lost. Home. But he still rode away that afternoon down the frozen trail and into the whispering wind weeks past. The plains thawed, the snow melted, and spring crept back to life. One morning, while Clayton was fixing fences at a ranch near Laramie, a black carriage rolled up. Out stepped Eli, now in clean clothes, and beside him Maggie, looking healthier than before. Mr. Reeves, she called out. You didn't think we'd forget you, did you? Clayton froze mid-swing, hammer in hand. Mrs. Turner, Eli, what are you doing out here? Maggie smiled. Repaying a debt. You gave us shelter of heart, and we've come to return the favor. Eli ran up, grinning. Grandma says you should come live with us. We've got horses and a barn and a big pond. Clayton laughed softly, shaking his head. Now hold on, Maggie raised a hand. You need work, don't you? My ranch foreman retired. I could use a man with a good heart and steady hands. He hesitated. I ain't no fancy man, ma'am. I ain't used to rich folk. Neither am I, she said gently. I'm used to good folk. That's rarer. And so he came back, this time not as a drifter, but as part of something. The Turner Ranch was vast. Rolling fields, horses, and a house that looked down over the valley like a watchful friend. Clayton found purpose again, training horses, fixing fences, teaching Eli to ride. The boy followed him everywhere, calling him Uncle Clay. One evening, while watching the sunset from the porch, Maggie turned to him. You ever think about settling down, Clayton? He smiled, eyes on the horizon. Used to think I didn't deserve it. But now, maybe I do. You've already settled, she said, patting his arm. You just haven't realized it yet. Months later, a festival was held in town. Maggie insisted they all go. People whispered when they saw her again, alive, well, and smiling beside a tall cowboy no one recognized. At the fairgrounds, Eli tugged on Clayton's coat. You'll enter the roping contest, won't you? Clayton chuckled. Only if you're my partner. They won second place, but to Eli it felt like gold. Maggie clapped proudly, her laughter echoing across the field. That night, back at the ranch, she said quietly, You gave that boy a father figure he'll never forget. Clayton swallowed the lump in his throat. He gave me a reason to stop riding away from things. When autumn returned, the leaves turned amber and Maggie's health began to fade. She passed peacefully one evening, her last words a whisper, Take care of each other. That's all that matters. Clayton buried her under the old willow behind the house, beside her husband's grave. Eli stood beside him, tears falling silently. From that day on, Clayton stayed, not because he owed them, but because they were his family now. He taught Eli to ride, to mend fences, to be the kind of man who gave more than he took. And when the boy grew older and inherited the vast Turner lands, he kept one promise carved into the gatepost for all travelers to see. For those lost on the trail, there's always shelter here. In the end, the lonely cowboy who once sought only a roof from the storm found a home richer than any gold, built not of land or money, but of kindness shared between a boy, his grandmother, and the man who stayed when the wind called him away.